everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Online Warriors podcast. My name is Nerdbomber, and I am joined by my guy, Mr. Techtic.
That's me, Mr. Techtic. Hello.
I don't know why I gave it a little bit of a country twang there, but, I was feeling it because we were traveling a little bit down south, and,
Yeah.
a little bit down south, not like super down
barely.
south, but like a little bit down south, and there were a couple accents. So
It was Virginia, by the way. It was not very south.
No, it wasn't. But there were a few people with accents. So, I adapted it for a split second there. Anyway, Illegal is not here this week. He is off on vacation.
Down south.
Down.
Actually, more south than we were.
So yeah, he's not joining us this week, but don't you worry, he'll be back next week. But
hyped for the twang that he shows up with.
We'll see. He usually has some like fun conversation starters, and we're usually not that cool, but I did come prepared this week. So because we were traveling, every time we leave like an Airbnb or a hotel, we go through every single room and we try to make sure that we don't leave anything behind, but sometimes you end up doing it. So Techtic, I have to ask you, can you tell us a story about a time you left something behind, whether it was at one residency while you were moving to another, or maybe you were leaving vacation and you left it behind, or maybe even you were going on vacation and you left something at home?
So you're the one that leaves stuff behind. And
hey.
However, this particular trip was the trip of leaving stuff behind. It was a wedding. And what is the most important thing besides yourself you bring to a wedding? The gift, the card. Left that behind. Had to set up a rendezvous after the actual event to make sure that the bride and groom got the card. Only then, the next day was, by the way, I got a card for upcoming Mother's Day and a card for my brother who was graduating. And then I left those at the Airbnb. This was just the trip of leaving things behind. And granted, I could have left just everything in the car and been fine. It would have all been there and I would have always had it. But no, not this guy. This guy majored in leaving things behind.
I feel like I usually end up leaving very important things behind. And this time I did. I stole your clothes, but it was more like pajama stuff. So I didn't feel so bad about it. But one of the times that was the most mortifying, I don't know if you remember this, but we went down again to another wedding and I had packed everything. I was ready to go. Makeup stuff, hair stuff, packed the dress, got the nice shoes. I had done my nails. I was feeling good. And then we get to the hotel because I think we traveled in the morning and the wedding was at night or something like that. And so I opened the suitcase because we quickly showered. We're getting ready for the wedding. And I realized I had no underwear.
Well, that's not leaving something behind. That's forgetting to pack.
No, I left it behind because I had put it in a pile. And it was still on our bed when we left. So I left it behind. I'm going to count that as leaving behind. And thankfully, you ran to a Target for me and you had me on I think it was FaceTime.
Are these good ones?
Yeah. And because it was like all of my underwear, like every undergarment that a woman wears, I left it all behind. And so he saved me. And I was standing butt naked in our hotel room panicking because I had nothing to wear. And
to be fair, it was only the face on FaceTime.
Yeah, I was not stark naked on his screen. I think I'd even turned my camera off. I think I was just looking at your camera, hopefully. I'm sure some Target employee probably got flash by accident.
I mean, you've left dresses at Airbnbs that we've left. You are notorious for this.
What's crazy is that I used to be really good about remembering stuff like that. And I feel like in the last few years, basically since like the time warp that was 2020, it's all gone down the crapper. Like I can't remember to pack anything. I think because I'm so stressed about just getting out the door now that whether I'm coming or going, I just tend to leave things behind.
Which shout out to that Airbnb host because they didn't even ask us to come back and get it or anything like that. They literally mailed it to our home address.
And didn't charge for shipping or anything. It was just there. It was great.
Service. Just absolute 5-star reviews. Those people, if you're listening to this, thank you.
Yeah, not every Airbnb is like that. I mean, not even every Airbnb is really nice. I feel like Airbnb is definitely a crapshoot, kind of a roll of the dice. I feel like we've gotten pretty lucky lately, though. I don't want to jinx us because we have a few more sprinkled throughout the next year that we are booking and going to. That's just, the cost of doing business when you bring your dog everywhere. But Yeah, I feel like we haven't really had any horrific experiences in Airbnb, but I've definitely heard people have like terrible, terrible Airbnb stories. And it's not my favorite, but like I said, when we have our dog with us,
Yeah,
there's nothing you can do.
we prefer hotels as a whole, but like, yeah, we have to bring he's an old stinky guy. He got to come with us.
Yeah, honestly, he gets a little pissy. Like when we come home, if we put him in boarding, he just doesn't want anything to do with us for like a solid 48 hours. He's just giving us the cold shoulder. And that's not great. But you know what else is not great? Us rambling on for another little bit while you really want to get into the nerdy news. And guess what? We've got some great topics for y'all today. We're going to be talking about Gears of War. We're going to be talking about Sackboy, some new Xbox pricing news, and a movie trailer for a horror movie, which we know I don't like, called Together. Techtic, which topic would you like to get into first?
Xbox pricing. This one.
Got you hot and bothered.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll give you the rundown. Xbox announced, or I guess Microsoft announced, that they will be increasing pricing on all Xbox consoles and accessories in the United States moving forward. I believe the new pricing will go into effect soon, later this year, but the Xbox consoles themselves will be going up anywhere from $50 to $100 depending on which type of Xbox you get. So like the Xbox Series X is going up a full $100 from $499 to $599, whereas the Series S, which is an older model, is only going up from $299 to $379. And I say only, but like that's a pretty big increase considering. I mean, I guess the Series S isn't that old, but like it's not the marquee console that people are buying. Controllers are going up in price. $69.99 for your standard colored controller. Special edition controllers going up to $80. The limited edition controllers going up to $90. They were $80, and the elite controllers are going up $10 to $20 depending on which one you end up getting. And then the wireless headset, seeing a $10 price increase as well, was $109. Now it's going to be $119. So
and Xbox games are set to go up to $80 as well.
Right. So this is the first time, since the consoles have launched, the series set of consoles have launched in 2020, that we've seen this price hike. And I think even when PlayStation ended up raising prices on the PlayStation 5 back in 2022, Xbox had come out and said, we're committing to maintaining our pricing structure. We're not going to increase our prices. But, in the wake of what we saw with Nintendo, obviously it was a big thing that we talked about a few weeks ago. And it was a big part of the Nintendo Direct. Not only is the Nintendo Switch 2 going to be a little bit higher in price than a lot of people thought it was recently revealed to be coming in at $450, and I think a lot of people and insiders thought it would be closer to like either $300 or $400. But games for Nintendo are also going to be increasing in cost to $80. So, we've kind of seen this coming. We've kind of seen this wave of price increases across the board. I mean, a few years ago, AAA games used to be only $60. Now I feel like $70 is kind of become the new norm. So we're very quickly seeing the jump to $80. Microsoft is kind of stating, this is the state of the economy right now. Obviously, the tariff stuff has stuff to do with it as well. I mean, we know that was Nintendo's reasoning too for a lot of their price increases on accessories and games. But
those were price increases on the next generation of hardware. This is just increasing their old technology. And yes, I understand there's manufacturing, but like this feels icky. And then on top of that, the thing that I'm guarantee you we're going to see that is just going to just soil my soup even more.
Soil your soup.
Do we expect to see the same kind of price hike with digital games? What is the overhead with those?
I mean, I would assume probably yes.
But then how do you say tariffs?
I think it's just kind of how, the pricing structure is just applied across the board to kind of spread out the impact of the tariffs. I'm sure maybe digital games might be like $5 cheaper, but every time we see a new release, we don't really see that. In fact, we actually see digital games go on sale sometimes a little bit less than physical games. Once they've been out for a while, I feel like the physical edition of games you can usually end up picking up at, your third-party retailers like your Walmart or your Target, and you can get copies of stuff for like $20 a couple months after they come out, but sometimes on the digital storefront, they're still full price. So I'm not sure that we're going to see parity when it comes to digital games. I feel like it's all going to be on the same playing field. And I wouldn't be surprised if, I know PlayStation increase the PlayStation 5 pricing in some of their global markets. But they haven't for the United States yet, I don't believe, but I would not be shocked if we don't see that coming too. I think this is just like the state of the industry moving forward is everything is going to get a little bit more expensive.
And that's not great. I mean, gaming was supposed to be this, well, I can't afford to go out drinking or whatever, but, for $20, I can just stay at home and have a good time. And
I mean,
even beyond that, it was the alternative to PC gaming because a PC setup was expensive. And we've just completely jumped the shark. And I know I'm ranting about something that is now probably close to 50 years old on a philosophy, but I don't like this. And then on top of all of that, just the price of games, and the games are really my fixation point. The price of games should be to pay for the developers, right? But again, and this
I have bones to pick in everything that you're saying, but continue.
I think you should pay the developers, and the games should be expensive for that. However, how does that tie into tariffs? I think this is just an excuse to blanket increase profit margin.
So first of all, I have a few things I want to nitpick. You said games used to be the thing that you could buy for $20 and you can sit there and have a good time.
This is a dated.
I can't even
take.
remember the last time a AAA title was $20. I'm trying to even think back to when games came out on the PlayStation 2 and I would beg my parents to buy me it. And I feel like games then were maybe $40, $50. I don't think I've seen a $20 game. Maybe the Game Boy had $20 games, but even then I feel like they were more expensive. Someone can fact check me on that. But I feel like
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. I don't know. I understand why games cost what they do. And I feel like we had this conversation before, and even when Steven was on the episode a while back when we were talking about the Switch, I don't mind paying the increased prices for big AAA titles, especially because, like you said, you got to pay the developers, and at the end of the day, it's a business. And love it or hate it, even though I view video games as an art form, it is a business. They need to make money. So I get it. Prices had been stagnant for a while. I feel like now the issue is that they're just climbing very quickly when the consumer had been really used to the same price point for almost a decade, if not more. And I feel like in the last 5 years, we've seen consistent jumps now. And I feel like that's really, rubbing people the wrong way. That said, there is something called patient gaming. And I know that is not what they want to hear because they want people to buy these games at the full $80 price point. But think about how many games are coming out, right? Think about how many different indie titles, how many different AAA titles in the last month alone with Game Pass. And I know that kind of skews pricing as well, but Game Pass has gotten, I think 6 or 7 new super lengthy titles that I want to play. And I just don't have the time to play them all. If I'm buying them all individually, I will never buy those at the full $80 price point simply because by the time I get around to it, it's going to be cheaper and it's going to be on sale. It's inevitable. These price points, unless you're Nintendo, they never stick. We see Ubisoft games within a month of them launching, they're hitting $20 sales. So yeah, the $80 price point feels really icky now, but I think a lot more people will end up leaning into patient gaming more than we've seen in the past. And I think too, this $80 price point, again, I don't love it. I'm not saying I love it. I'm not saying I love these price increases. In an ideal world, we would not see these price increases. But think about how many people are also playing free-to-play games, or they'll buy a game one time. Games as a service, as much as, that's not really our demographic. We don't play those type of games. But think about how many people just buy Madden. And that's the only game they're going to buy all year, and they're just going to play that. And maybe they'll buy some microtransaction nonsense, but they're only going to buy that one game, and they might not even buy it at full price. They might wait till Black Friday and they'll get it for $40.
Yeah.
I think there are ways for consumers to kind of still enjoy video games. I don't think that the hobby is going to die because of these price hikes, but I think it is going to hurt the hobby simply because they're going to be banking on these $80 sales and they're just not going to get it. Because I don't think people have the disposable income to just be buying $20, $80 games a year. I think the majority of gamers are just going to wait for sales, or they're going to hit their backlog.
Do you think they're going to, so for things like the headset, do you think they're going to move to more third-party accessories?
It's interesting that you say that, because do you remember, again, I'm referencing the PlayStation 2 era, but do you remember Mad Catz?
Yeah.
And I know now there's, I think it's 8-bit dough, but I think they said they're going to stop shipping to the United States. But I wonder if we'll see the rise of these third-party accessories, controllers, headsets, simply because people might get them a little bit cheaper. Like maybe you don't need the full high quality, high fidelity that you're getting from the brand name Xbox headset or PlayStation headset or even Turtle Beach. Like maybe you'll see people turn more towards like the cheap $20 thing they found at like, I don't know, Family Dollar, like there was that niche of like super cheap accessories that people would go towards. And like Mad Catz brand, I did have a Mad Catz racing wheel.
Did it have a turbo button?
I don't remember. But it did have like, I had the pedals and stuff and it was super fun and it was actually like pretty high quality. But then there was some other Mad Catz stuff that was like a little rough because I think they just picked like outsourced vendors and they just slapped their brand on it. But I can kind of see that making a little bit of a resurgence if people start turning away from like the name brand stuff.
And then my other question to you was, do you think this being on the heels of the Switch 2 announcement and Nintendo raising their price up to 80s is a coincidence, or do you think they saw this and went, yep, it's time for us to announce it?
I mean, I can't imagine because the Nintendo Switch announcement was last month, and I feel like changing a pricing structure for an entire brand like this takes a lot more than 1 month to enact. So I have to imagine that this is probably in the works. But maybe, Nintendo announcing their prices and upping all of the accessories after the tariffs were announced kind of like opened the door. And they're like, okay, maybe we can do this and people won't be mad at us because people, were kind of mad at Nintendo, but they still end up to get Switch 2 pre-orders. So clearly they're not that upset about it. So maybe it just kind of like gave them the green light to go ahead with something they'd been thinking about for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Microsoft has the cult following to be able to just kind of go, yep, and not get people mad.
Well, I think, and this kind of segues us into the next topic, I think that's why, they have such an emphasis lately on expanding their first party software titles outside of just the Xbox
what
ecosystem.
A segue.
Right. Look at me go. So Microsoft actually just announced, and we saw this with Indiana Jones, and there are a couple other franchises that were Xbox exclusives that they then, ported over to the PlayStation. But for the first time ever, Microsoft announced that Gears of War will be hitting PlayStation. So they announced the Gears of War Reloaded remaster, which is a remaster of the very first game, and that'll be coming out August 26th for $39.99, so not $80, but it is a remaster. And it's going to be on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC with a whole slew of features, like 4K resolution, 120 FPS. They're going to, continue to have cross progression and cross play now across all platforms, whereas before it was just between Xbox and PlayStation. The Ultimate Edition DLC and content will also be, included in this new remaster, including, bonus campaign act, multiplayer maps and modes that were DLC, as well as, the full 2-player co-op campaign and 8-player multiplayer. And additionally, if you already own the Ultimate Edition, you get the upgrade for free. So
first question, sort of
yes.
Sidebar. What was your favorite Gears?
I think my favorite Gears was probably Gears 2. Because wasn't that, and spoiler if you haven't played this, wasn't Gears 2 like the Dom and Maria stuff? Or was that, I thought it was 2, not 3. I feel like that was the most like emotionally impactful. And it was also when
I know 2 was better than 1. They really fine-tuned the controller. 3 was the one where you had like the big queen boss fight. I thought 3 was my favorite.
So Gears 2, I thought, was when we went from just fighting the Locust to fighting the new people. Hold on. Sorry. You put me on the spot here. I don't remember.
It's an important question.
It is. No, so I believe Gears of War 2 is when you are fighting the Locust, but I think that's when you start seeing a little bit more of the Lambent. I don't think they're like the super major threat yet. I think in 3, that's when they become like the focal point. But I believe Gears 2 is still my favorite, like I said, from the storytelling aspect. And it just, I don't know, something about it. I just really liked Gears of War 2. Gears of War 3 was fine, but I just remember thinking like 2 it finally meshed the gunplay with storytelling that I really wanted. Because if you remember at the time, like games like Halo and Gears, their first installments, they didn't have a lot of story lore. Like you had the characters, but there wasn't a ton of lore drop. Like every time you wanted to learn a little bit more about the backstory, you had to like either dig online or, read side material or the novelizations. And I feel like in both Halo 2 and Gears 2, that's when they really started layering layering in the stories and the cutscenes and really giving it more of an emotional bent. And you guys know me, I love a good story. So Gears 2 is my favorite, I think.
So like I said, in Gears 2 is where the combat really kind of hit its stride. With this remaster, do you believe that they need to incorporate that same type of gameplay mechanic in this one? Or do you think it's, update the graphics, send it?
I don't remember how they remastered the Ultimate Edition, but I want to say that this probably is just going to be, update the graphics, make it run a little bit better and send it. Because you don't necessarily want to change the core experience. And there is something to be said about seeing the evolution of the gameplay as you go through the different games in the series. I am a little bit surprised, to be totally honest with you, that they didn't package this as like an all-in-one. Yeah. And that, because they already remastered the first game.
I have an example for you of plenty of franchises that do this. Metroid Prime, right? They could have released 1 through and 3, but they didn't. They're going to do a slow trickle.
And I mean, it kind of makes sense, especially since, it's going to be hitting PlayStation for the first time and gameplay, like you're going to have that drip and you're going to bring more people into the franchise. Now, the thing that I want to know, and I want to know if this makes you upset. So the last Gears that we played together was Gears of War 4, I believe. Might have been 5.
4 was with Marcus. 5 was with the girl. We played both.
Okay, yeah. So the last Gears we played was Gears 5. And it kind of ended on a cliffhanger. And that game came out a long while ago. Like, I believe, played this in 2019 is when it came out. We're not quite 10 years later, but 6 years later, we still haven't heard any inkling of Gears 6. There's no resolution to that story. Does that bother you that we keep seeing remasters? In fact, they even introduced Gears of War E-Day, which is a prequel to the entire series that doesn't have a release date yet, but we've seen more of that than we have of Gears 6. Does that bother you, especially given that it ended on a cliffhanger?
It does not, and I'll tell you why.
Did you not like Gears 4 and 5?
No, I did. I liked both of them. They weren't my favorite, but I liked both of them. But the reason why that does not bother me is because, here's another example. Elder Scrolls Oblivion, okay? That was a remaster that it is in no way saying that they're stopping on the franchise. They're just trying to pull more people into it before ultimately releasing the latest and greatest Elder Scrolls. I don't think they've put down this franchise.
Well, they haven't. I mean, E-Day is coming out, and that's a completely new game and a completely new story. But it feels like even that kind of went ahead of in the line. Like, it cut the line. Gear 6, I need a resolution to that story.
It's gonna come. I mean, you can't go, Luke, I am your father, and then never wrap it up. It's not a spoiler. It's been out forever. You have to provide closure. It's gonna happen. I'm not worried. I'm just cautiously optimistic that they're doing this just to bring more people in before they drop that sucker.
See, I'm a little worried though, because and this is a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, if you haven't played any of the Gears series, this won't really give you too much like story detail, but I will say that Gears 5 did something that no other Gears before that did. It allowed you to make a pivotal choice, so everybody's game was slightly different at the end. There was a major choice that you had to make, and it would change your story going forward. And I think, and I'm wondering if they painted themselves into a corner, because how do you have this epic campaign story that is supposed to be consistent? Like, one of the things that Gears does is it's consistent for everybody. It is a linear experience. You play it with your friends, but it is a linear experience. Everybody experiences the same story. And then they introduce that weird little branching aspect of it. And I wonder if they don't know what to do with that. And it scares me that maybe they'll never be able to figure it out.
I don't know. Plenty of games have done that. I mean, Mass Effect is a really good example of picking up where you left off. You can do subtle tweaks where it doesn't take away from the main story arc. For example, you lost, well, who's the frog guy? You're
Rex.
Krogan. You lost, yeah. You lost your Krogan. And I didn't. Our stories were ultimately the same, but there were subtle tweaks.
All I'm going to say, and again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the choice that you had to make at the end of Gears 5, if you don't remember, was very, very major. And not only would it be super major in terms of, your squad moving forward, but it would also impact a lot of like side characters in that game and how they might react moving forward. And I feel like maybe that's why that's taking so long, because they have to basically make 2 versions of the same game. I don't know, but it makes me mad. But I mean, It's a great game still. I would recommend it. So if you haven't played it yet and you're on a PlayStation and you've always wanted to play this Gears franchise, you should get into it because honestly, it is one of the most fun that I have ever had playing video games because Techtic and I, we played it together. Like that was something that we did. We sat down and we played every single Gears game together in co-op split screen. Fantastic time.
10 out of 10 couple experience.
So Techtic, would you like to move on to another franchise and IP?
Yes.
Before we hit the break. So this one is not a huge news story, but I do feel like because we're big Sackboy fans, I did want to do this. Yeah, it's worth mentioning. So as you know, the movie Until Dawn is a PlayStation production, and as PlayStation likes to do before their PlayStation games, they kind of have that like Marvel cinematic intro where they show all of their properties and it's like a little splash screen. And apparently, based on reports coming out of that new Until Dawn movie, they have removed Sackboy from that little sequence. Techtic, how do you feel about this?
Nervous. I really hope that they're not putting it down. So like Astrobot did really, really well as a standalone, not just, hey, this is our console game. It did fantastic. And I really hope they don't go, we got to pick one little guy to be our face of the franchise. And so let's get rid of Sackboy. I really hope that's not the case because there's room for two little guys. There's room. So please, more Sackboy. Plus, I don't know why. One, Astrobot, not co-op. Sackboy, co-op.
True.
Two, something about little frumpy guy hits way harder than a robot to me, personally. I just love him. Please leave him. And then also, lastly, and the most important point that I need to make is collectibles. Those who know.
See, I feel like Sackboy was kind of given a little bit of a disservice. So I never played any of the Little Big Planet games. I feel like that was a big touchstone, especially with like PlayStation 3. I feel like Little Big Planet was one of their big IPs that they were holding up. Because like, let's be real, guys. PlayStation 3 struggled a little bit. They didn't have the big splashy IPs that Xbox was putting out at the time. And I feel like I just didn't play Little Big Planet. And so I originally just kind of associated Sackboy with this game that I'd never played. And I feel like Sackboy's Big Adventure was completely different than Little Big Planet and was not given the advertising and platforming that it deserved. Because that game, like you, Techtic, got it for me as a Christmas gift when we got our PlayStation 5. And I was like, I don't know what this game is. And you were like, no, trust me, like this looks like a really fun co-op platformer. We're going to play this. And I was like, all right, like I'm in, you know. We booted it up and we were obsessed with it. The platforming, so tight. The time challenges, if you thought the Astrobot time challenges were not difficult enough, the Sackboy time challenges, man, I was sweaty. No, there were some, we were sweaty. You had to make it through in one piece. Imagine playing that solo even, and not co-op.
The co-op made it easier because I was allowed to die.
Right.
Because you'd carry the team. Your back was hurting, but you'd carry the team.
Like, it was just a really solid platformer, and I feel like it doesn't get enough love. So I hope that not being as, you know, big of a seller as they hoped doesn't kill the entire franchise, because man, Sackboy was great. Love Sackboy. So with that, we're going to head into the break. But before we do, we would be remiss if we didn't shout out our wonderful Patreon producers, Mr. Steven Keller and Mr. Lloyd Weldy. They are both subscribers on our Patreon at the night level over at www.patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. And as a result of their patronage, they get this weekly shout out on every episode, as well as occasional guest spots on the show. If you go back a couple weeks ago, you'll see both of them were on episodes, as well as voting rights for our secret segments and our video vlogs. If you want to be as cool as Steven and Lloyd, go head over to our Patreon and check it out. We've got 3 different tiers of subscription. We've got the lowly page, the humble squire, and the fantastic knight. And we have some goodies for every tier. It helps us keep the lights on, and we greatly appreciate it. And now, we're going to hit the ad break.
Hey, this is Ken M.
Padawan J.
Coach Duffy.
From the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour podcast. Every week, the ODPH is talking sports, movies, TV, comics, and more. It's always a parlay of topics on each episode. You can find the ODPH on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, and wherever you find great podcasts, such as the one you're listening to right now. Don't forget to check out OchoDuroParlayHour.com, where you can find the links to all of the ODPH social media accounts, links to the bands whose music you hear each week on the show, hashtag 607 podcast info, and parlay points our companion blog section of the show. Thanks for listening to the ODPH. Now get back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
All right, and we are back. Now, before we go any further, we talked about a lot of stuff so far. We've talked about Gears, we've talked about Xbox pricing, we've talked about our boy Sackboy hopefully not going away, and we want to hear your take on all of these topics. We're over on Blue Sky, and we would love to hear from you. So our main show account is at onlinewarriors.bsky.social. I'm at ownerdbomber.bsky.social. And Techtic, he, kind of deviated from the Online Warriors linkage.
I'm too cool for school.
But he is at techtic.bsky.social. And if you want to heckle illegal for not being here, that's something I love to do. You can hit him up at owillegal86.bsky.social. He's not super active, but I think he sees it all and then he feels bad about himself. So go for it. I give you full permission to go heckle him and make him feel bad about himself. And he'll also hear this too because he listens to us back when he mows the lawn. So then he'll be double heckled. So it'll be great. A+. Now we're going to close out the news segment, pivoting away from video games a little bit and talking about a new movie trailer that just dropped. So Dave Franco and Alison Brie, they're a couple in real life. And I believe Dave Franco has actually directed Alison Brie in several movies, but this is the first time that they're collaborating, acting together in a movie. And so they released a trailer, or I guess rather Michael Chang's Sundance released a trailer for Together, which is a new kind of like romance but horror movie, which very interesting plot. So the official synopsis, I'm going to read it to you. Years into their relationship, Tim and Millie find themselves at a crossroads as they move to the country, abandoning all that is familiar in their lives except each other. With tensions already flaring, a nightmarish encounter with a mysterious, unnatural force threatens to corrupt their lives, their love, and their flesh. And this is a Neon production, so it'll be hitting theaters Friday, July 30th. Now, Techtic, can you kind of give us a little run through of what you saw in this trailer, what you thought about it, if you think you're going to see it, et cetera, et cetera?
It seemed like a creepy cabin kind of movie where there's like ghosty things. And I know I'm oversimplifying it because that's not what it was, but it was like a lot of like they're trying to like rekindle their marriage, but also if they get close, their bodies stick together in like a horrific thing. There's even one scene where they're trying to cut each other apart with a jigsaw, it looks like. And it's very horrific and not the fun. Like I kind of think it would be neat. You know how like in the old Disney movies there would be like this witch that's like, be careful what you wish for or something. I don't even know if it's a Disney movie. And it would be like a fun little thing that like Freaky Friday, for example, right? It was this crazy experience, but it led to like a fun learning and then they're stronger in the end. Golly gee, I hope that this somehow comes out happy in the end because this looked horrific.
Yeah, I feel like just given the fact that it's a horror movie, I don't foresee a happy ending. Like there was a lot of, narrative in this trailer about finding your other half and like make sure you never let go of your other half once you find them. And it's definitely going to be, a take on codependency and attachment issues, I think. And I feel like maybe it'll be a really interesting, I guess, social study looking at relationships, I guess. But there's a lot of creepy stuff happening here. Like they're being pulled together through walls. Like I think Alison Brie in one scene in this trailer drives away. And then Dave Franco's character, because they're like somehow magnetized to each other. I don't really understand. They're not touching, but they're like magnetized to each other. Then he gets like rammed into the wall as she turns the corner. Very, very weird, interesting concept. I don't know how I feel about it.
Let me ask you the most important question. Are you watching this?
Man, I don't know.
Well, let me ask you two questions.
know.
Are you watching this in theaters?
No.
Are you streaming this?
Definitely this would be something that I would stream. Potentially maybe see it at a drive-in as like a second or third feature. We always talk about like summer drive-in movies, and this feels like something
you saw The Purge at the drive-in, so like you're open
weirdly,
to horror
The
movies.
Purge I actually like. Because The Purge is not like...
you like murdering people, like you think about it.
No, but The Purge is not like... It's not supernatural creepy. It's more just like action, people suck, and they're going to shoot each other. Like,
But Don't you think real murder is way more scary than fictitious voodoo magic?
I hear you, and maybe this is just the part of me inside that's desensitized to violence watching so many action movies over the years, but like it just kind of it didn't feel very much like a scary movie. The Purge felt more like an action survival movie than anything else. Like maybe there were a couple jump scares, but for the most part it felt more like an action movie, whereas this feels like it's going to actively give me the heebie-jeebies.
Both the heebies and the jeebies?
Yeah. Alison Brie's going to give me the heebie and Dave Franco's going to give me the jeebie.
You know,
and
I don't know. I think this is... Have you ever seen Human Centipede?
No, I have not.
Have you ever
asked
seen
me
Saw?
this so many... No, I actually have never seen the Saw movies.
I think it's
Is that
gonna
weird?
I don't think this is going to have so much as a supernatural twist, but I think it's going to have more of a...
Bro, at
like
one
a
point they're
Saw
like...
feel, where it's like they have to figure out how to survive. And yes, I know this is like, there is weird magic, but like through this, it'll be like a puzzle on how to survive. And I think it's going to have Saw vibes.
Is it weird that I haven't seen Saw?
It is, because it's kind of a cult classic at this point. And I'd recommend at the very least the first one. The first one's quite good.
Is it something I could get through, or would I be like squinting the whole time? Like I'm not super squeamish, but like there's some gratuitous.
It's not like
gore
jump
that I
scary.
can't do.
It's more like you have to save this person's life, but harm yourself or be selfish, and everyone else dies.
Like I hear you. That's not what I'm asking though. Like
there's guts and blood,
but like so some of the gratuitous gore that I can't get behind. Like, I don't really mind, like I already said, like violence and gore, I feel like I've seen so much I'm kind of desensitized to, which is a whole nother topic. But like there are times like if I'm seeing a needle go in someone's skin in slow motion close up in
there's
movies.
a scene where he cuts a key out of himself.
Like I usually have to like kind of look away. I can't do that for whatever reason. So like am I going to be not watching the movie 90% of the time that I'm quote unquote watching this movie?
No, that's a high percentage.
50% of the
Probably
time?
50-50.
Okay, interesting. Maybe we can do, I don't know, like a projector movie night where we can invite people over.
You can call it Seesaw.
Yeah, and then I can like eat popcorn and pretend like I'm watching, and then I'm not. But I can then say I watched it. Maybe.
Deal.
Who knows?
But that's the vibes I think it's going to have. And honestly, I'm all for these kind of like nightmarish twister type movies. I don't want what's the Ring. I don't want ones like that. I want something
I didn't mind
that's
the Ring
like,
either, which is I don't understand my preferences with horror because like
I just don't care for ghosts and aliens. That's the main ones.
I didn't mind Signs. That's aliens. I did have issue with Blair Witch. That I was looking through my fingers a lot of the time. I didn't have really issues with Paranormal Activity because
it's aliens.
No, Paranormal Activity was ghosts. I didn't have issues with that. I did have major issues. Like there's some things that are like possession based. I can't do. I don't know. But I really liked House of Wax, but that had like Chad Michael Murray. So I don't know. I weirdly like there was a point in time. So my parents had Stars. And when that movie came out, it was on Stars like every other hour, right? Like it was basically being played almost 75% of the time that you would turn on Stars. And I watched that so many times. And I don't know if it was because Chad Michael Murray was in it or if it was because My Chemical Romance played over the ending credits. I don't know. And I was a little bit of an emo kid. I'm not sure. But yeah, that was one that I watched. I would watch that again. We can watch House of Wax.
He's a hunk.
Yeah, he's a hunk. All right, so that kind of wraps up our news topics. Chad Michael Murray is a hunk, and
Dave Franco's a little hunky, so
he is. Honestly, I would go see this movie if only just because Dave Franco and Alison Brie. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, they're both hunky. I'll say that.
Hunky dory.
They're a hunky couple. That's fine. I would watch it for them. Moving on to what are you up to Wednesday? Techtic, what have you got going on?
So the main thing that I want to talk about that I did was I've already mentioned that we went on this wedding trip, so I don't want to belabor that point any further, but we are all caught up to The Last of Us. These are not out for more than 7 milliseconds before we watch them. Guys, if you haven't watched it, it is so good. Just watch it. The previous week's episode was sort of building up to this one. This one had a little bit more action, but you could start to feel the suspense is bubbling. We're building up to the Ellie's gonna start some trouble, and it is gonna be glorious. And honestly, I think I like going into this blind as opposed to the first season where we played the games. I think I like it better, not knowing what direction it's going to go
Are you still planning on playing the game
after the fact so that I can compare notes.
Okay. Do you think that's going to ruin any of the game for you? Or do you think the game is so different? Like, one of the things, and this is, I guess, a little bit of a spoiler, but I feel like the show has done really well, at least in like this last episode this week, is they've really shown a lot of game elements without belaboring the point. Like, they showed kind of like rifling through drawers looking for medicine. They had like stealthy elements. They've had action elements. They've had some shooting elements. They've even had like platforming stuff. But I feel like the game experience is so much different because you spend longer in those little bits of time, whereas the show focuses a lot more on like characterization. And even one of the things, so I tend to listen to the companion podcast every week. I usually listen to it the next morning on my drive to work. And one of the things that Neil Druckmann actually called out, I believe, in this week's episode is that there are characters that you never really get to see a lot of in the game, except when you're fighting them because you're playing as, a main protagonist. But in the show, they can actually jump around and show different perspectives a lot more easily because you're not beholden to, oh, this is the person that you're playing. That's the perspective you get. And so I feel like it's going to be a really different experience. So I don't feel like it spoils the game as much because, like, when you play the game first, you know the story. And so it's like you see where the show is going. But even if you know the story, the game is still going to have those unique gameplay experiences that you're just not getting in the show. You're going to be stealthing through things. There's going to be those high suspense moments.
And we are seeing things that, aren't in the game, that like the little vines, touching the little vines. That's not in the game. That's not a spoiler. That wasn't in the first one. And so they are taking a little bit of creative liberty, which feeds into the storytelling and the way that they're doing it here. It's just no notes. You guys are doing a great job and keep it up.
It is interesting. I've seen a lot of people online, some of the online discourse, people are upset because it's not like a 1-for-1 of the video game. But honestly, even the first season, what people were upset about, this is an adaptation. It was always meant to be an adaptation. You can't have a 1-for-1 of the video game, because they want to entertain players and newcomers alike. And think about how bored you would be not having any surprises. You know what I mean? So I feel like they're doing a great job.
So that's the main thing that I wanted to talk about.
All right. And then on my end, so while we were in the car, I don't really love bringing like physical books with me, and my Kindle wasn't supercharged. I'm in the middle of the Throne of Glass series, but I didn't bring that book with me. So on my phone, I started reading Dungeon Crawler Carl. And this is a book that actually started, I think it was like a web serial on like Royal Road, but it has since become a book series. And it's a genre called a lit RPG. And it kind of reads like you're progressing, or the main character is progressing through a video game. And I don't want to give too much away. I feel like it's a very unique read. It's a lot different. I've never read any other lit RPGs. It's a very unique reading experience. I wasn't sure I was going to like it because there's like stats and stuff that level up as the main character moves through the story. But it's really entertaining, and it's also just kind of like some of the characters are super ridiculous. The entire plotline sometimes feels like really like you're in the middle of a video game. Sometimes video games are just ridiculous. And I don't know. It's just a really entertaining read. There's a bunch of, I think, volumes of the book out there because I think the web series was split up into a bunch of different books. I've only partway through the first one, but yeah, I would recommend it. If you like video games and you like reading and you want something that kind of bridges the gap, I think, or maybe you don't find a lot of books that you enjoy, but you really love the way that video games progress, I feel like it's a really good foray into the world of reading if you don't read as much.
The one comment I will say about your reading while driving is you didn't wear your cool glasses.
I didn't. So I bought these. They're like motion sickness glasses because now that I'm getting older in life, I feel like if I try to read more than like an hour at a time in a car that's moving, I start to get really nauseous. So I bought these really, really uncool motion sickness glasses. It's like 4 circles. So 2 that go around your eye and then 2 on each side of your eye. And they're filled with liquid so that as the car jostles, the horizon point is always steady or something like that. I don't know. Somehow it's like balancing your equilibrium because it's tricking your eyes into thinking that the horizon line is always steady so that you're not getting nauseous. And yeah, I did not, because I was reading very sporadically, like I was talking to you, I was just kind of looking around at my surroundings. We stopped a few times. I was petting the dog. I didn't really wear them consistently. So next road trip, I'm going to have to really, give them a go, give them a workout.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. All right, so that wraps up our episode for this week. Once again, you can find us over on Blue Sky, at Online Warriors, at bsky.social, at OW Nerdbomber, and at Techtic.bsky.social. We're all over there. Hit us up. Talk to us about anything that we talked about today. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to chit-chat. And until then, look forward to seeing you next week when Illegal is back at the helm, talking about more nerd stuff.
And in the meantime, stay safe.
And keep on podcasting.